March today, and what the past 7 days in Egypt have shown is that Egyptians will no longer put up with this. When Hosni Mubarak addressed Egypt today, he added further insult to injury by talking as if, it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago when he could say, I will step down, and people could accept it. Again, he's completely out of touch. And he talks like this father who is going to protect his people from chaos when he is the reason this chaos is in place in the first place. So unless the Obama administration understands this ever-widening gap between Mubarak and Egypt and understands that we're talking now about Mubarak on one side and Egypt on the other, and that it must side with Egypt, this one man must not bring his country down, then the Obama administration is both deaf and blind.
Well, deaf and blind, but where does it leave then the Obama administration's credibility in the region? President Obama just not so long ago in Cairo precisely spoke about the need for reform, but the U.S. administration officials very clear to dance around the word democracy. We heard the president mention it just once today in his brief remarks. But could it jeopardize the U.S.'s long-term interests if the administration is seen to continue what is perceived as a double standard policy in the region?
Absolutely. I mean, the U.S. credibility with dictators in the region is just fine, because those dictators, well, those who are its friends, they will all get along. The U.S. administration does not understand that we are now at the threshold of an era where the people in the Arab region, in the way that Egyptians are doing, are standing up and saying no more, in the way that Tunisians did, are standing up and saying no more. We are completely separate entities in these dictators, and anybody who has the nerve to back these dictators and claims to be acting in our interest is a hypocrite. So, I mean, this really is kind of the death knell to these hypocritical foreign policies that will favor a dictator over the interest of his own people. And this is what the courageous Egyptian demonstrations, the courageous Egyptian revolution is telling the world, essentially, that it is time to side with people, because if you do not, then you are a hypocrite. It's that simple.
But is the U.S. though beginning to do enough when the president talks about the transition of power having to begin now? Is he going remotely far enough, or should he have called for the immediate stepping down of President Hosni Mubarak? Was it his chance to break away from past policies? Did he squander an opportunity, or not quite just yet?
Right. Well, I've got to hand it to Egyptians who have been demonstrating in Egypt for this past week, because they have managed to get both Mubarak and Obama to give 2 speeches. So, power to the people for doing that. And it seems to me that every time Obama speaks, he adds a few more words that are an attempt to side with the Egyptian people, but just kind of leaving it just short. I don't know if there are some kind of backroom negotiations that go much further, but it sounded today when he used the word now, a peaceful transition now, that he was trying to get further than where he was the last time he spoke after Mubarak's last speech. And again, this is a reflection of the U.S. administration, the difficulty it faces in trying to basically untie itself from years of this hypocritical foreign policy that has tried to accommodate both a dictator and claims that it cares about democracy and freedom. It can no longer work. Now, for the longest time, I've maintained that the Egyptian people have courageously stood up for their own rights and freedoms and do not need to be rescued, and I continue to maintain this. But for the sake of the moral standing of the U.S. administration and other administrations, they must make it very clear that Mubarak cannot jeopardize the stability of his own country. And your report mentioned these thugs now who are going out claiming to be pro-Mubarak supporters who want to attack the revolutionaries. So they cannot jeopardize Egypt's security for the sake of standing with this man. And this is where the moral standing is imperative. They must make it clear, Mubarak, go now.
Well, President Mubarak, in the meantime, has been making what appear to be piecemeal concessions, if we can call them such. First, deciding to make do with the cabinet, now saying that he simply won't run in the next elections. It sounds very reminiscent of what we just saw and heard in Tunisia. Do you think that most Egyptians will continue to protest the way Tunisians did, because their demands simply haven't been met so far?
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like there's a script that is being passed around by Arab dictators who have been completely startled to find that their people are in revolt against them. And just as we saw Ben Ali in Tunisia kind of being forced to, at first he makes a very kind of strong speech and says, I will not tolerate with this. And, in the same language, foreign intervention, political parties, all this kind of scaremongering and making it seem like Egyptians who want freedom and who want democracy are somehow traitor to their country, when it's very obvious to Egyptians today that who cares about Egypt? It's the people who want freedom in Egypt, who care about Egypt, and it's Mubarak who again seems to operate in this alternate reality, who talks to Egyptians as if they still take him seriously and doesn't understand that what he's saying is, 2 decades too late, let alone, something that Egyptians would accept now.
Eltahawy, thanks so much for joining us and for your perspectives on this.